My dad was born on August 4th, 1929. And he has seen so much change within his lifetime. During World War II, my dad was just 12 years old. And when the older cousins went off to war, it was his responsibility to take care of the ranch. On the McNear family ranch in eastern San Rafael, there was an abundance of nature. There were ducks, there were rabbits, there were foxes, and they worked with nature. They would swim in the reservoirs. It was a completely different world. It was a working ranch.
Oh yeah, I got all kinds of stories.
My father treasures history. You walk around his house and he collects everything.
Yes, that's my hats, yeah. Good old slot machine, that is for sure.
From antique, yeah, what do I say? What do I say? Yeah. It's everything.
This has been a while. There it is. The old coffee machine. That was my grandfather's, E.B. McNears. And I used to grind his coffee for him. That's a family tree. My dad and everybody else, my grandfather and all of them, John A. McNear in there.
The McNear family came from Scotland in 1701, and they settled in Wiscasset, Maine. And for over 150 years, they helped build the eastern seaboard of what was to become the United States of America. Captain John A. McNear, my father's great-grandfather, was born in the 1830s. And when he learned of the gold in the hills of California, as a young man, he decided that he would set sail. He loaded his earthly belongings on the ship, which sailed around the Tierra del Fuego, the southern tip of South America. But he missed the boat, somehow as a young boy in his 20s. But he was intrepid, and he set out through the Isthmus of Panama, through raging rivers and malaria-infested jungles to arrive in the Pacific Ocean. From there, he took the old Sonora ship up to San Francisco, only to find that all his belongings had sunk around the Tierra del Fuego. And with very little money, he set forth to Petaluma, California.
He thought a good thing to do would be to have a feed mill, because there was a lot of animals and stuff like that could use feed, and there was no feed companies up there at all. So he built this feed company years ago. So that's how he got started.
He couldn't afford to go to the gold hills, so he started a bank where people who had money from the gold country were able to buy homes. And he started the Steamer Gold, which brought the eggs, milk, and butter to San Francisco. In a few years, he became one of the first millionaires in California. These are the original abstract titles.
Yeah, they are.
With the money that he had, he purchased 2,500 acres of land in eastern San Rafael so that the shipping industry from the Petaluma River would be able to stop at Point San Pedro and continue on to San Francisco.
This is all China camp here. There's China camp and the pier and stuff like that. And
shortly after the Civil War, there was a tremendous amount of discrimination against the Chinese people. After working hard in the gold rush, they were being sent home. John A. McNear sailed over to San Francisco. He offered the Chinese refuge on his private property, and over the years, they established what was to be called China Camp.
He said, well, why don't you come over to my place? I got 2,500 acres, and how many people you got here? Well, he said we got around 500 more or less, maybe 500, 600. That's no problem. Well, come on over, but you got to build your own place. But I'll give you a place to do this, and so they were quite happy. They rather than get run out of town, so they all moved from San Francisco over here, and they built China Camp Number 1. The China Camp Number 1 burned down after about, I'm not sure, 20 years or something like that. So they came to EB and said, well, what are we going to do now? We got to have to tear this stuff all out of here and build another one. He says, no, why waste? That's a lot of work. He says, there's another pond on the other side, on the right-hand side of the place, and just build a place there.
The Chinese started a thriving shrimp business, exporting 3 million pounds of dried shrimp to China annually.
There were just tons of shrimp in the bay for a long time, and it didn't have a lot of trees like they have now, but there was big open spaces, and they would lay their shrimp out on the side hills so they could dry out and stuff like that. It was amazing.
Dad had an idyllic childhood, and he lived out at the ranch, which today is Glenwood Peacock, Miwok Meadows, and China Camp.
Got good memories from that house. It was a wonderful place. This whole mound here is all a shell mound.
The McNears weren't the first ones to settle eastern San Rafael. The Native Americans were the Miwoks, and they had settled that area for thousands of years. And they would fish off the San Francisco Bay, and they would gather the shells of the clams, the mussels, and they would build these beautiful shell mounds. And when they buried their dead, they would bury them beneath the rubble of the shell mounds. Years went by, and when Erskine Baker McNear built his home, he built it on an Indian shell mound, not quite knowing the spiritual ramifications of that.
They dug a great big hole down there and took all this stuff out. Well, in the process, they picked up quite a few bones. So he took them on, he set them all aside, and then he rolled boulders from the top of the hill all the way down, great big boulders, they're 10 foot in diameter, some are 6 or 8, rolled them all down, he dumped them in the hole and mixed them up with concrete and everything else, and he made darn sure that it was heavier than the rest of the house. Then when he got through, he figured, now I'll take all these bodies, and in the front of the house, he left a hole underneath the front stairs, and we'll take all these Indians and put them down there and rebury them again and cover it all up and put planks on top.
Years later, archaeologists came to the McNear family home to study the bones and to learn about the history of the Miwok Indians who once lived and thrived in this area.
The whole thing's a ranch. Everything was a ranch. Everything. But there was nothing here except the ranch. I handled everything. I milked the cows, I fed the pigs, I did everything. I was just a little kid, but I learned fast. I had to. So I had to run the place because there was nobody else around. So I had to mow the hay and plow the place up and do the whole work, everything. By the time I got to be 18 or 20 years old, I probably done my share of work already in life.
Imagine Glenwood and Peacock Gap without any homes or construction and schools.
We had a lot of fun, you know. In the evenings, when the sun was coming down and it was getting dark, we'd play hide-go-seek on horseback. And this is the other pond here. That's my horse, Pegasus. Pegasus was always rearing up in the air. He would rear up so high in the air, sometimes he would give me a bloody nose. He'd come up and he'd bang me right in his schnoz, and I'd have a bloody nose. Good old Pegasus was something else. My mother had her horse and buggy, and she would be coming into San Rafael, and if the horse stopped, she'd have to get up there and grab the hold of the tail and wiggle the tail, then the horse would take off and go. And until she finally got to the high school, then she went there, and then later on, I went to San Rafael High School too, also, and had a great time. And you also went to San Rafael High School, and I met my wife in San Rafael High School. I lived here for most of my life, except when I was working at the brickyard.
The McNear Brick Company has been there since the 1860s.
This is home sweet home. Look at all the old time stuff.
My father ran the block company, which is different than the brick, and helped invent Heidi block, which is the lightweight concrete block that helped be the structure and foundation of so many homes and businesses throughout the San Francisco Bay Area.
That, you don't want them getting wet. You put them in here and they shut these shutters, and you guys all dry out by themselves. But there's nobody running back and forth.
The 2,500 acres of land, which was once the McNear family ranch, is now a brickyard, a quarry, it's China Camp State Park, it's Glenwood and Peacock Gap with schools and all sorts of things that modern urban life has to offer.
How does it make you feel now, Dad, to drive through Glenwood and Peacock?
Makes me sad. I liked it the way it was. The place was beautiful. I got pictures of rolling hills and green grass and cows and ponds and this and that and everything else. I liked it better with nobody and nothing. But it's okay. Good,
all
mate.
right.
All right.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself, huh? All righty. See you later.
My father is a pioneer. He's a man who's worked the land. He's had strength in overcoming obstacles, and each and every day he has taught me lessons.
Thank you for everything you've done for me, my golly sakes.
My honor.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you.
Well, and I wouldn't be here if it weren't.
That's for sure, too. Shake on that one, baby.